Hello and welcome to The Essential Reads. My name is Isaac and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. We are continuing with Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, and this is Part 5, Chapter 5. Lebezyatnikov had a look of alarmed concern. I must see you for a moment, Sofya Semyonovna. Please forgive me. I somehow thought I should find you here, he said, turning to Raskolnikov suddenly. That's to say, I didn't think in that sort of way, but I merely thought... Katerina Ivanovna has gone insane, he blurted out suddenly to Sonya, transferring his attention away from Raskolnikov. Sonya gave a little scream. At least, I think she has. Anyway, we don't know what to do with her, and that's a fact, miss. She came back, having apparently been thrown out of some house or other. And even possibly having been beaten. That's the way it looked, anyway. She'd gone to see Simon Zacharik's boss, but he wasn't in. Would you believe it? She went running off to where they were dining. To the house of this other general. And imagine, she really insisted on seeing Simon Zacharik's boss. She actually had called him away from the dinner table. I expect you can picture what happened. She was thrown out of the house. And she says she returned the abuse and threw something at him. That's not hard to credit. How she wasn't arrested, I shall never understand. Now she's trying to describe it all to everyone, even Amalia Ivanovna. But you can't make out what she's saying. She keeps shouting and beating her head. Oh yes, and she keeps telling everyone and shouting it out loud that since everyone has abandoned her, she's going to take her children out to the street and be a street musician, and the children will sing and dance, and so will she, and they will get money that way. And every day they'll go and perform under the general's window. Let them see how the well-brought-up children of a high-ranking father have taken to the streets to beg. She keeps hitting the children, and they cry. She's teaching Lilyonya to sing the Little Homestead, the boy to dance, and Polina Mikhailovna too. And she's been tearing up her clothes. She's made little caps for them to wear, like actors. And she says she'll carry a metal basin and bang it instead of playing the hurdy-gurdy. She won't listen to anyone. I mean, what kind of behavior is that? It simply can't go on. Lebezyatnikov would have continued, but Sonya, who had been listening to him, scarcely able to draw breath, suddenly snatched up her mantilla and hat and rushed out of the room, putting them on as she went. Raskolnikov went out after her, and Lebezyatnikov followed. She really has gone insane, he said to Raskolnikov, coming out into the street with him. I didn't want to fright Sofya Semyonovna, so I said, I think she has, but there can be no possible doubt. There are these tubercles that grow on the brain in cases of consumption. It's a pity I don't know any medicine. Actually, I did try to reason with her, but she won't listen. Did you tell her about the tubercles? Oh, for heaven's sake, I said nothing about that. In any case, she wouldn't have been able to understand. No, what I mean is that if you reason with a person logically and show him that he really has nothing to cry about, then he'll stop crying. It's really simple. But I expect your view is that he won't. Life would be too easy then, Raskolnikov replied. As you please, of course. Katerina Ivanovna would have some difficulty in understanding. But are you aware that in Paris there have already been some serious experiments relating to the possibility of treating the insane by means of the simple influence of logical reasoning? There was a certain professor there who died not so long ago, a serious scientist who believed that such a treatment was possible. His basic idea was that there is nothing particularly wrong with the organism of the insane person, and that insanity is, as it were, a logical error, an error of judgment, a mistaken view of things. He would refute the arguments of his patients step by step, and would you believe it? It's said he achieved results by that way. But in view of the fact that he accompanied this treatment with cold baths, those results should, of course, be viewed with some skepticism. At least I think they should. Raskolnikov had stopped listening long ago. As he drew level with the building in which he lived, he gave Lebezyatnikov a nod and turned in through the gateway. Lebezyatnikov snapped out of his reverie, looked round him, and went running on his way. Raskolnikov went into his closet of a room and stood in the corner of it. Why had he returned here? He looked at that yellowish scraped wallpaper, at the dust, at his little couch. From the courtyard below there was a sharp, incessant banging sound. Someone seemed to be driving something into some object somewhere. A nail, perhaps. He went over to the window, raised himself on tiptoe, and for a long time, with the air of extreme and concentrated attention, searched the courtyard with his eyes. But the yard was deserted, and no hammerers could be seen. On the left, in the outhouse, a few open windows were visible. On their windowsills stood pots of straggling geraniums. Washing was hung up outside the windows. All this he knew by heart. He turned away and sat down on the sofa. Never, never before had he felt so horribly alone. He felt yet again that perhaps he really did hate Sonya, and particularly now that he had made her even more unhappy. Why had he gone to ask her for her tears? Why was it so essential for him to make her life a misery? Oh, what vileness! I shall stay as I am, on my own, he said suddenly in a decisive tone of voice. And she's not going to visit me in jail either. About 5 minutes later, he raised his head and gave a strange smile. He had had a strange thought. Life might really be better in penal servitude, he suddenly reflected. He could not remember how long he had sat in his room, with all those vague thoughts crowding his head. The door suddenly opened, and in walked Avdotya Romanovna. At first she stood still and looked at him from the threshold, as he had looked at Sonya earlier that day. Then she came inside and sat down on the chair opposite him, in the place she had sat the day before. He looked at her in silence, and somehow without any thought. Don't be angry, brother. I've only come to see you for a moment, Sonya said. The expression on her face was one of thoughtfulness, but it contained no severity. Her gaze was clear and calm. He saw that this woman, too, had come to him with love. Brother, I know everything. Everything, now. Dmitri Prokofitch has told me about the whole affair, and has explained it to me. You're being persecuted and tormented because of a stupid and infamous suspicion. Dmitri Prokofitch has told me that you're not in any danger, and that there's really no need for you to react to it all with such horror. I see the matter differently, and fully understand the anger you must feel, and the fact that this indignation may leave its mark on you for the rest of your life. That is what I'm afraid of. As for your having abandoned us, I do not condemn you for that, and would not dare to do so. And please forgive me for having reproached you earlier. I can only feel, well, that if I had a great unhappiness like that, I too would want to go away from everyone. I will never tell Mother about this, but I will mention you to her constantly, and tell her on your behalf that you will be coming to see us very shortly. Please don't worry about her. I shall calm her down. But don't you be a source of worry to her either. Come and see us at least once. Remember that she's your mother. But the reason I've come to see you just now is simply to say... Donya began to get up from her chair. That if I can be of any help to you, if there is anything that you require, even if it's my whole life or something, then call to me, and I shall come to your side. Goodbye. She turned sharply and walked towards the door. Donya! Raskolnikov exclaimed, stopping her. He got up and went over to her. That Razumikhin fellow, Dmitri Prokofitch, is a very good man. Donya blushed the merest shade of pink. Well? She said, waiting for a moment. He's a down-to-earth man. Hard-working, honest, and capable of intense love. Goodbye, Dunya. Dunya flushed all over, and then suddenly looked alarmed. But what is this, brother? The way you're giving me advice like this, it's as if we were parting forever. It doesn't matter. Goodbye. He turned and walked away from her over to the window. She stood there for a moment, looking at him uneasily, and then left in a state of alarm. No, he had not been cold towards her. There had been one moment, at the very end, when he had felt a terrible desire to embrace her tightly and say farewell to her. Even tell her. But he had not even been able to bring himself to give her his hand. Later on, she might shudder when she recollected that I embraced her. She might say that I'd stolen her kiss. But will that one be able to hold out, or won't she? He added to himself a few moments later. No, she won't. Women like her are never able to hold out. And he thought about Sonya. From the window there came a breath of fresh air. The light outside was less intense now. He suddenly took up his cap and went out. It was, of course, impossible that he should take any concern for his morbid condition, and indeed he would have rejected the idea of any such concern, even had it occurred to him. But all the constant anxiety, all the mental horror he had experienced could not but wreak its consequences. Though he was not yet prostrated by a full-blown fever, this was probably due to the fact that his constant inner anxiety was keeping him on his feet, and in full consciousness, but in an artificial way, and only temporarily. He wandered without aim. The sun was going down. A strange anguish had begun to tell on him of late. In it there was nothing particularly searing or burning, but from it there emanated something constant, eternal, that gave a foretaste of unending years of this cold, numbing anguish. A foretaste of a kind of eternity in one ocean of space. This sensation generally began to torment him even more fiercely during the hours of evening. It's these really stupid, purely physical ailments which are linked to the sunset or something that make a man do stupid things, no matter how hard he tries not to. Never mind Sonya. It'll be Dunya you go and see next. He muttered with hatred. Someone called his name. He looked round. Lebezyatnikov was rushing towards him. Would you believe it? I've been to your place. I've been looking for you. Would you believe it? She's carried out her threat and taken the children with her. Sofya Semyonovna and I had a terrible time finding her. She herself is beating a frying pan, and she's making the children sing and dance. The children are crying. They stop whenever they come to a crossroads or a row of shops. There's a crowd of stupid people running after them. Come on. What about Sonya? Raskolnikov asked in anxiety as he hurried off after Lebezyatnikov. Simply in a frenzy. Not Sofya Semyonovna, that is, but Katerina Ivanovna. Though, actually, Sofya Semyonovna is in a frenzy too. But Katerina Ivanovna is really in a frenzy. I tell you, she's gone quite insane. They'll be hauled in by the police. Imagine what effect that will have. They're along by the canal just now, at bridge. Just a stone's throw from where Sofya Semyonovna lives, very close by. Down by the canal, very near the bridge, and only 2 buildings along from the one in which Sonya lived, a little group of people had gathered. There was a notable concurrence of little street urchins, boys and girls alike. The hoarse, hysterical laughter of Katerina Ivanovna could be heard even from the bridge. And indeed, this was a strange spectacle, capable of arousing the interest of a street audience. Katerina Ivanovna, in her old dress, her drap de dame shawl, and battered straw hat, which had slanted over in an outrageous mass to one side, really was in the last stages of frenzy. She was tired and out of breath. Her exhausted, consumptive features looked even more martyred than ever. This added to the fact that out in the street, in the sunshine, a consumptive person always looks more ill and deformed than when seen indoors. But her excited state had not grown any the less, and with every moment that passed, she was becoming more and more overstimulated. She would rush at her children, shout at them, tell them what to do, instruct them right there in front of all the people in how to dance and what to sing, and then lapse into despair when they did not understand, and start hitting them. Then, without finishing, she would rush at the audience. If she saw anyone who was even slightly well-dressed and had stopped to take a look, she would at once launch into an explanation to the effect that this was what the children of a good, one might even say aristocratic family had been reduced to. If she heard laughter in the throng, or a cocky remark, she would instantly pounce upon the rude upstarts and start shouting at them. Some people were really laughing, while others shook their heads. Everyone found the spectacle of the crazy woman with the frightened children an interesting one. Of the frying pan Lebezyatnikov had described, there was no evidence. Instead of banging a frying pan, however, Katerina Ivanovna had begun to clap out the time with her emaciated palms as she forced Polya to sing, and Lyonya and Kolya to dance. Moreover, she herself had begun to sing, but each time she did so, she would break off on the second note in fits of terrible coughing, which plunged her back into despair again as she cursed her cough and wept bitterly. What infuriated her most of all was the weeping and terror of Kolya and Lyonya. She really had made an effort to dress the children up in costumes, in the way in which street singers of both sexes dress. The little boy had had a turban made of some white and red material set upon his head to make him look like a Turk. There had not been enough to make a costume for Lyonya, too. On her head, she wore the red knitted woolen cap, or rather nightcap, of the deceased Semyon Zakharayevich, through which was run a piece of ostrich feather, which had belonged to Katerina Ivanovna's grandmother, and which she still kept in her travelling box as a family curiosity. Polya was wearing her ordinary dress. She was looking at her mother in timid embarrassment, staying close by to her, hiding her tears, realizing that her mother was not in her right mind, and staring round her with an uneasy gaze. The street and the crowd had frightened her horribly. Sonya kept persistently following Katerina Ivanovna around, weeping and imploring her to return home that very moment. But Katerina Ivanovna was not to be placed. "Stop it, Sonya! Stop it!" she kept shouting in a quick patter as she hurried to and fro, gasping and coughing. "You have no idea what you're asking, like a little child. I've already told you that I won't go back to that drunken German woman's. Let everyone see, let all St. Petersburg see them begging for alms, these children of a well-born father, who served justice and the faith all his life, and who, it may be said, died in the execution of his duty." Katerina Ivanovna had already managed to create this fantasy for herself, and to believe in it blindly. "Let him see it, let that wretched villain of a general see it. Anyway, you're being stupid, Sonya. What are we going to eat now? Tell me that." "We've tormented you enough. I won't allow it anymore." "Ah, Rodion Romanovich, it's you!" she exclaimed, catching sight of Raskolnikov and rushing towards him. "Please explain to this silly idiot of a girl that this is the most sensible thing for us to do. Even street performers earn money, and everyone will be able to pick us out at once. We'll realize that we're an impoverished family of well-born orphans who have been reduced to penury. And then that general will lose his position. You'll see. We'll go and stand under his window every day, and when the Tsar drives past, I'll get down on my knees, push all these children in front of me, and point to them, saying, 'Protect them, father.' He's the father of the orphans. He is merciful. He will protect them, and that wretched general..." "Lyonya, tenez-vous droit! I want you to dance again in a moment, Kolya." "What you whimpering for?" "He's whimpering again." "Well, what is it? What are you afraid of, you silly idiot?" "Merciful Lord! What am I going to do with them? Rodion Romanovich, if you only knew what a muddle-headed lot they are. What can one do with children like this?" and very nearly in tears, a circumstance that did not prevent her from keeping up a constant and unceasing patter of speech. She pointed to her whimpering children. Raskolnikov began to try to persuade her to go home, and even said, thinking that it might have an effect on her vanity, that it was not proper for her to wander about in the streets like a common busker, as she was preparing to become the directress of a high-class girls' boarding school. A boarding school? Green grows the grass far yonder, Katerina Ivanovna exclaimed, bursting into laughter, which immediately turned into fits of coughing. No, Rodion Romanovich, that dream has faded. They've all turned their backs on us. And that wretched general. Do you know, Rodion Romanovich, I threw an inkwell at him. There was one right there on the table in the manservant's room, beside the sheet of paper on which people signed their names, and I signed mine too, threw the inkwell at him and ran away. Oh, the villains, the villains! But to hell with them now. I shall feed these children myself without bowing to anyone. We've tortured her enough. She pointed at Sonya. Polechka, how much have you collected? Show me. What? Only 2 kopecks? Oh, the scoundrels. They don't give us anything, just run after us, sticking their tongues out. Now what's that dunce laughing at? She said, pointing to a member of the crowd. It's all because Kolya's so slow-witted, he's nothing but trouble. What do you want, Polechka? Speak to me in French. Parlez-moi français. After all, you do know a phrase or two, I taught you. Otherwise, how will people know that you're from a good family? Well-brought-up children, quite different from the usual street performers. We're not performing some Petrushka out of the streets. We're going to sing an aristocratic romance. Yes, what shall we sing? You keep interrupting me, but You see, Rodion Romanovich, we stopped here in order to decide what to sing. Something that even Kolya can dance to. Because we're doing all this, as you can imagine, without the slightest preparation. We must come to an agreement so we can rehearse it thoroughly. And then we shall go off to the Nevsky Prospect, where there will be far more people of good society who will notice us instantly. Leonia knows the Little Homestead. That's the only song she knows, but everyone sings it. No, we must find something much more aristocratic than that. Well, Polya, have you thought of anything? I do wish you'd help your mother. My memory must have gone. Otherwise I'd remember something. No, not the hussar leaned on his saber, for heaven's sake. Oh, let's sing something in French. Then people will see at once that you're children of the gentry, and that will touch their feelings far more deeply. What about Marlborough s'en va en guerre? Since that's a children's song, a real children's song. It's used in all aristocratic families for lulling the children to sleep. Marlborough s'en va en guerre, ne sait qu'on reviendra. She began to sing. No, wait, 5 sous would be better. Now then, Kolya, put your hands to your sides. Quickly. And Leonia, you keep dodging away in the other direction. And Polechka and I will sing and clap out the time. 5 sous, pour montrer notre ménage. And she burst into fits of coughing. Straighten your dress, Polechka. Your shoulders are showing. She said through her cough as she recovered her breath. It's very important that you should behave decorously and with a bit of refinement so that everyone can see that you're children of the gentry. I told you that your bodice ought to be cut longer and be 2 bits thick, didn't I? That was you, Sonya. You and your advice. Make it shorter, you kept saying. And now you've made the child look like a complete mess. Oh, there you go crying again. What's wrong with you, you stupid children? Come on, Kolya. I want you to start now. Quick, quick, quick. Oh, what a tiresome boy. 5 sous. Another soldier. But what do you want? It was indeed so. A policeman was squeezing his way through the crowd. But at the same time, a gentleman in a uniform jacket and overcoat, a sedate civil servant of about 50 with a medal round his neck. This latter feature was especially gratifying to Katerina Ivanovna, and made an impression on the policeman too. Came up to Katerina Ivanovna and silently handed her a green 3-ruble note. His face expressed sincere compassion. Katerina Ivanovna took the banknote and bowed to him politely, even ceremoniously. "I thank you, dear sir," she began in a haughty manner. "The reasons that have prompted us... Take the money, Polichka. There are well-born and magnanimous people who are instantly ready to help a poor gentlewoman in her misfortune. As you see, my dear sir, there are well-born orphans, one might even say with the most aristocratic connections. But this general was sitting eating his hazel grouse, and he stamped his feet because I disturbed him. 'Your Excellency,' I said, 'please protect these poor orphans as you knew my deceased Semyon Zakharayich very well, and the most villainous of villains most cruelly slandered his very own daughter on the day of his death. Here's that soldier again! Protect us!' She cried to the civil servant. 'What does this soldier want with me? We came here after running away from one of them on Meschaneskaya Street.' 'Well, what errand brings you hence, fool?' 'You're not allowed to carry on like this in the streets, ma'am. You're causing a disturbance.' 'Speak for yourself.' 'It's just the same as if I were going around playing the hurdy-gurdy. What's it got to do with you?' 'As far as the hurdy-gurdy's concerned, ma'am, you have to have a license to possess one of them. And in any case, you're upsetting people just by the way you're carrying on. Where do you live, may I ask?' 'What do you mean, a license?' Katerina Ivanovna wailed. 'I've only just buried my husband today. What license do I need?' 'Madam, please calm yourself,' the civil servant began. 'Come along, I'll take you home. It isn't right for you to be out here in this crowd. You aren't well.' 'My dear sir, you don't know anything about it!' Katerina Ivanovna shouted. 'We're going to Nevsky Prospect. Sonya! She's crying too. Oh, what's wrong with you all? Kolya, Leonya, where are you off to?' She suddenly exclaimed in a scared voice. 'Oh, stupid children! Kolya, Leonya, where are they going?' What had happened was that Kolya and Leonya, frightened beyond the limits of endurance by the street crowd and the behavior of their mentally disturbed mother, and having, moreover, caught sight of a soldier who looked as though he was going to capture them and take them off somewhere, had suddenly, as if by some tacit agreement, seized each other by the hand and rushed off in flight. Sobbing and wailing, poor Katerina Ivanovna dashed off to catch them. As she ran, weeping and gasping for breath, she made a pitiful spectacle. Sonya and Polya darted after her in pursuit. 'Get them back, Sonya! Oh, stupid, ungrateful children! Polya, catch them! It was for you children that I... Ugh!' As she ran at full speed, she tripped and fell. 'She's cut and bleeding! Oh, merciful Lord!' Sonya exclaimed, stooping over her. Everyone came running. Everyone crowded round. Raskolnikov and Lebezyatnikov were the first to arrive. The civil servant also hurried over, followed by the policeman, who was muttering "Ekma," the way peasants do, and making a hopeless gesture, sensing that the incident had taken a troublesome turn. 'Off you go now! Move along!' he shouted, trying to disperse the people who were crowding round. 'She's dying!' somebody shouted. 'She's gone mad!' someone else said. 'May the Lord preserve us!' a woman said, crossing herself. 'Have they caught the little boy and girl?' 'There they are, bringing them now. The eldest daughter's got a hold of them. Look at them, the vile things!' But when they had a proper look at Katerina Ivanovna, they saw that she had not cut herself on a stone, as Sonya had thought, and that the blood that was staining the pavement was welling up from inside her by way of her throat. 'I know what it is. I've seen it before,' the civil servant muttered to Raskolnikov and Lebezyatnikov. 'It's consumptive blood that comes welling up and chokes them. It happens to a female relative of mine. I witnessed it only recently, and it was quite the same with her. She coughed up a tumbler and a half quite suddenly. But what ought we to do? She's going to die in a moment.' 'Bring her this way, up to my room,' Sonya begged. This is where I live. Look, it's this house here, the second one along. Bring her up to my room, quickly, quickly, she said, rushing from one person to the other. Send for a doctor! Oh, merciful Lord! By dint of the civil servant's efforts, this task was completed, and even the policeman helped to carry Katerina Ivanovna upstairs. She was brought into Sonya's room, practically unconscious, and placed on the bed. She was still bleeding from the mouth, but she seemed to be coming round. They all came into the room, one after the other. Sonya, Raskolnikov, Lebezyatnikov, the civil servant, and the policeman, who had been chasing the crowd away. Some members of which had accompanied them right up to the door. Polya brought Kolya and Leonya in, holding them by the hands. They were both weeping and trembling. People even came through from the Kapanaumovs. Kapanaumov himself, lame and blind in one eye, a strange-looking man, with hair and side whiskers that bristled upright. His wife, who looked as though she had been frightened once too often, and a few of their children with faces that were frozen in expressions of constant surprise, their mouths open wide. Amidst all these speculators, Svidrigailov too suddenly appeared. Raskolnikov stared at him in astonishment, unable to think where he could have come from, and failing to recollect him among the crowd. People were talking about the need for a doctor and a priest. Although the civil servant whispered to Raskolnikov that in his opinion a doctor was now superfluous, he made arrangements to have one sent for all the same. Kapanaumov himself went on this errand. In the meantime, Katerina Ivanovna had got her breath back, and the blood had stopped flowing temporarily. She was looking with an unhealthy but fixed, penetrating gaze at the pale and trembling Sonya, who was wiping drops of sweat from her brow with a handkerchief. At last, she asked to be lifted up. She was raised into a sitting position on the bed, while hands supported her on both sides. "Where are the children?" she asked in a faint voice. "Have you brought them, Polya? Oh, you stupid things! Why did you run off like that? Huh?" Blood still caked her dried lips. She let her gaze move around the room, taking everything in. "So this is the kind of place you live in, Sonya? I've never been to see you here before. Never had the occasion." She looked at her with suffering. "We sucked you dry, Sonya. Polya, Leonya, Kolya, come here. Well, here they are, Sonya. All of them. Take them. From one set of hands to another. But I've had enough. The ball is over. Lie me down again. Let me at least die peacefully." And they lowered her back onto the pillow again. "What? A priest? There's no need. Where would you get the money for one? I have no sins. In any case, God will forgive me. He knows how much I've suffered. And if he won't forgive me, there is even less need." A restless fever was taking an ever-increasing hold of her. From time to time she would shudder, move her gaze round and recognize everyone for a moment. But these brief glimpses of awareness would immediately give way to delirium once more. She was breathing hoarsely and with difficulty, and something seemed to be bubbling in her throat. "Your Excellency, I said to him," she screamed out, taking a deep gulp of breath after every word, "that Amalia Ivanovna, Liliana, Kolya, hands at your side, quick, quick! Glisse, pas de busk! Tap your feet! Be a graceful child! Du hast Diamanten und Perlen! How does it go after that? That's what we ought to sing! Du hast die schönsten Augen, Mastchen, was willst du mehr? Oh yes, of course! Was willst du mehr? He's contradicting her, the idiot! Yes, yes, and then there's another one. In the heat of noon, in Daxton's deep valley. Oh, how I used to love that song. I loved the romance to the point of adoration, Poleshka. You know, your father used to sing it before we were married. Oh, vanished days. That's the one that we ought to sing. Now, how does it go? Oh, I've forgotten. But remind me, how does it go? She was in a state of extreme agitation and was now making efforts to get up. At last, in a hoarse, terrible, overstrained voice, she began to recite, screaming and gasping at every word with an air of obscurely mounting terror. In heat of noon, in Daxton, deep valley. Your Excellency! She suddenly cried in a heart-rending wail and dissolving in tears. Protect these orphans, since you've known the hospitality of the deceased Simon Zekrai, who was even almost an aristocrat. She gasped, shuddering, suddenly regaining consciousness and gazing round at everyone with a kind of horror, but then recognizing Sonya. Sonya! Sonya! She said meekly and affectionately, as though surprised at seeing her in front of her. Sonya, dearest, are you here too? Once more they helped her sit up. Enough! It's time! Farewell, my poor creature! They've driven the jade to death! I've overstrained myself! She cried despairingly and full of hatred. I collapsed onto the pillow with a thud. Again she lost consciousness, but this final oblivion did not last long. Her withered, pale yellow face jerked back, her mouth opened, and her legs stretched out convulsively. She gave a deep, deep sigh and died. Sonya fell on her corpse, gripped her in her arms, and froze there, her head fixed close to the dead woman's withered chest. Polya fell prostrate at her mother's feet, kissing them and sobbing violently. Kolya and Leonya did not yet understand what had happened, but sensed that it must be something very dreadful, seized each other's little shoulders in an embrace, and, fixing each other with their eyes, suddenly, both at the same time, opened their mouths wide and began to howl. They were both still wearing their fancy costumes. Kolya in his turban, and Leonya in her skullcap with its ostrich feather. And how was it that the testimonial of good progress had suddenly turned up on the bedside beside Katerina Ivanovna? It was lying there, by her pillow. Raskolnikov could see it. He withdrew to the window. Lebezyatnikov came running over to him. She's dead, Lebezyatnikov said. Rodion Romanovich, I'd like to have a couple of words with you, Svidrigailov said, approaching. Lebezyatnikov immediately made way for him, and retired discreetly into the background. Svidrigailov led the surprised Raskolnikov even further into the corner. All this bother, the funeral and so on. I shall take it all upon myself personally. You know, it all costs money, and as I told you, I have more than I need. I shall place the little Polya and the two little fledglings in some better category of orphanage, and endow each of them with the capital sum of 1,500 rubles, to be paid on their maturity, in order that Sofya Semyonovna may not be troubled any more on their account. And while I'm about it, I shall pull her out of the cesspool, too. For she's a fine girl, don't you think? Well, sir, and you may tell Avdotya Romanovna that this is the use to which I have put her 10,000. What do you expect to gain in all this philanthropy? Raskolnikov inquired. A man of suspicion, Svidrigailov laughed. Look, I told you, I don't need that money. Well, you won't simply let me do it out of humanity? After all, It's not as if she were a louse. He poked a finger in the direction of the corner where the dead woman lay. Like certain old female pawnbrokers we know, is she? Come now, I think you'll agree. Is Lucian to continue his existence and go on doing loathsome things? Or is she to die? And I mean, if I don't offer my assistance, why Polya, for example, will go that way too. She'll go down the same road. He said this with a kind of winking, jolly roguery, never taking his eyes off Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov turned pale, and his blood ran cold as he heard the things he himself had said to Sonya. He instantly recoiled, staring wildly at Svidrigailov. How do you know? He whispered, scarcely breathing. Why, I live right through the wall from here, at Madame Reslich's. These are Kapernaumov's rooms, and through there lives Madame Reslich, an old and most devoted friend. I'm one of the neighbors, sir. You? The very same! Svidrigailov continued, quaking with laughter. And I can assure you on my honor, my dear, dear Rodion Romanovich, that I found what you said of remarkable interest. Why, I told you we would come to be on closer terms with each other. I predicted it to you. Well, and so it's come true. And you will see what an adaptable fellow I am. You'll see that I'm still not so much a bore. Thank you so very much for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, share, all that jazz. And if you really enjoyed it, do subscribe, because there is more to come. If you're listening on podcast, please leave a review, as it helps get this in front of as many people as possible, and reading your reviews really, really makes my day. If you want to support the show further, you can just listen to the show on Spotify to help me get the monetization requirements that I need there. Or you can click on the Ko-Fi link, which is now on screen, or in the description box, and do like a little donation thing to the channel. It's a direct way to support me and help improve this space and do all those wonderful things like that. But once again, thank you so very much for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.